Getting ready for the Lions defense.
Yeah.
How much getting ready do you need to do for the Lions defense these days, Barry?
I think you just show up.
That's
I think
what I've
pretty
heard.
much show up. Look, Tua's trying to say all the right things. He said all the right things. And the truth is, the Lions are, like they've bought into Dan Campbell. Like they try. Like they are not folding anything up. Having said that, no team in the NFL allows more yards per pass attempt over the last 4 weeks than the Detroit Lions. Opposing quarterbacks completing 77% of their passes over this stretch against the Lions. That is an NFL high, 77% of their passes. And so Tua, who's played 3 full games this year, and he's thrown for over 260 yards in all of them. So given that the Dolphins have the highest implied team total in the slate, 27.5, I think Tua is locked in as a top 6 quarterback this week. Should have a monster game here. I don't think this game is in Detroit on the turf. And so good luck keeping up with Waddle and Hill there.
Yeah, track meet for them. Another quarterback in your top 6, Kyler Murray. Murray's top 6 among quarterbacks in both pass attempts and rushing attempts. He makes the love list this week.
Yeah, and that rushing is obviously not only why you like Kyler Murray on a week-to-week basis, but especially against the Vikings, who gave up over 45 yards to both Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts, 2 other mobile quarterbacks earlier this season. We've talked about this Vikings-Cardinals game a decent amount during the show here. Vikings allowing the second highest yards per pass attempt in the NFL over the last 4 weeks. Like, you can throw and throw deep on the Minnesota Vikings. DeAndre Hopkins is back, and so Minnesota, which allows the 6th most passing yards in the NFL over the last 4 weeks, should be a good day to have Kyler Murray on your team. He comes in at QB5 for me this week.
The year of Daniel Jones continues, coming in as a top 10 quarterback
Mr.
for you.
Dimes to you.
Yes, Danny Dollars. QB9 in points per game this season.
$half. Let's not go crazy. But yeah, he's a top 9 fantasy quarterback so far this season on a points per game basis. 3 passing touchdowns in his last 2 games.
He's running.
He had just 3 total in his first 5.
Yeah.
But yes, your point, the rushing is what's keeping his fantasy floor high. He's averaging 49 passing yards per game. He has 3 different games with over 65 yards rushing. And so 49 yards rushing, I mean, that's a touchdown. He throws 1 touchdown, he runs for another. Like, all of a sudden, top 9 quarterback. Over the last 4 weeks, by the way, Seahawks bottom 8 in the NFL in both pass defense and touchdown rate. One thing I will mention, we'll talk about this in a second, but one of the people that Daniel Jones will not be throwing to this week is Kadarius Toney.
We will get into that.
Yes, he has been traded. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the segment.
Not that he ever was throwing to Kadarius Toney.
No.
Has anyone seen Kadarius Toney?
Yeah, in the tub.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
Can't make the club in the tub.
But he
Best
continued
ability
to.
is availability.
That's right. So Kadarius Toney going to the Chiefs. We will get into that on the show in just a bit. But a couple others receiving votes on the love list for quarterbacks. Derek Carr. New Orleans defense has not even been close as to what it was advertised as in the preseason.
No, we talked about this when we were sort of talking about Darren Waller on the hate list as well. Like, they just aren't throwing. And by the way, you don't blame them because they're running the ball so effectively. It's all Josh Jacobs all the time. So far, they've been much more run heavy, and so you've got a run heavy team that now has to face the Saints. Over the last 4 weeks, New Orleans allows touchdown passes. They allow a lot of touchdown passes. My hope here with Derek Carr, right? My hope here with Derek Carr is that the Saints, which are the Saints are pretty good against the run. They've been better against the run. And I think maybe they say, hey, we're at home. Let's focus on stopping Josh Jacobs, which is a little bit of like, sort of pick your poison. But I will say this. Like, if ever there's a game for Derek Carr to get back on track, I think this is the week here. He comes in as a top 10 quarterback for me. Get this. Saints, bottom 5 in the NFL in yards per pass attempt, completion rate, and passer rating allowed over the last month. And so if ever there was a game for Derek Carr to get back on track, I think it's this one. Again, they've been so successful running the ball, they haven't had to throw. So I'm putting them on the love list in hopes of sort of, putting that out into the universe, that we need Derek Carr to get back to his throwing ways.
On the other sideline, Andy Dalton has had to throw. As you've hinted many times, you don't know which team it's going to. But Andy Dalton getting a little love this week as he takes on a Raiders defense that's had its problems.
Every quarterback to face the Raiders this year, Connor, has scored at least 18 fantasy points. Andy Dalton is a quarterback facing the Raiders this week. Hashtag analysis.
It counts.
There you go. He qualifies a quarterback. Every quarterback to face the Raiders this week scores 18 or more fantasy points. Ipso facto, bingo bongo. Obviously, the math checks out. You don't have to do any more analysis than that. He makes my others receiving votes this week as well. I also, by the way, I kind of like Sam Ehlinger.
Yeah.
Right? Listen, you scout the draft every year for Bleacher Report. Talk to people about what you saw about Ehlinger coming out of Texas.
He's somebody that gives this offense a little bit of mobility finally in the pocket, right? With Matt Ryan, we just know what it was at this point. A guy that never moved well, now can't move at all. With Ehlinger, he can run around, make some plays, extend plays. He's got a lot of juice. He's got a lot of life. He will lower his shoulder at the second level. He will grind out extra yards. And I think it might get this passing offense a few broken plays that they haven't had all year.
Right.
So
1,000%. To your point, over 1,000 rushing yards and 15 rushing touchdowns in his two final seasons combined.
Big red zone
at the University of Texas. Big red zone player. And I just think this is interesting. I don't have a stat for this, but the Colts, I believe, are 3-3-1. Right? They're in the thick. Like, that division is so brutal. Like, they could win that division. And so here's Frank Reich saying two things. Number one is, like, we're making this switch and it doesn't have anything to do with Matt Ryan's injury. We're going with Ehlinger. And by the way, we're making a switch from our quarterback, but Nick Foles is on this roster. Nick Foles, who won a Super Bowl with Frank Reich and is obviously a much more veteran quarterback. And so they're basically saying what we've seen in practice, we think our best chance, like, they're not phoning this in. This is not hey, we're packing it in, because they're in the thick of this division race. They are saying that they believe, from what they've seen in practice, that Ehlinger gives them the best chance to win. Frank Reich saying it's his job the rest of the way. So given the mobility, I think that's going to help fantasy managers as well, because Michael Pittman, Paris Campbell, Alec Pierce, I love him some Mo Alley Cox. Mm-hmm. You've got Taylor and Hines in the backfield. There's actually some nice weapons here for Ehlinger as well. And so, to your point, getting into some of those off-schedule plays, I think will help him, given how bad that offensive line in Indianapolis has played. I do think this hurts Paris Campbell a little bit, just because, Paris Campbell's been getting a lot of, Matt Ryan's under center, getting pressured, about ready to be sacked. Let me dump it off to Paris Campbell, like really low A-dot there. And so I think Ehlinger, who's more mobile, hurts him a little bit there.
Ehlinger coming in as QB 20 for Barry this week. Somebody that I really think can galvanize that Colts offense and give them a little life.
I think he is a must-add in any deep league, any two-quarterback league, super flex league. I really like him fantasy-wise. I think he could be kind of Daniel Jones-esque.
That's a perfect comp for what his production can be. On the other side of things, the hate list led by Aaron Rodgers. I mean, they just can't get anything going right consistently.
The only thing you can point to about whether you would start him is that his name is Aaron Rodgers.
That's it.
Right? Because if you look at just the stats, there's nothing on the season, he's not a top 20 fantasy quarterback. He's QB 21. He's averaging under 14 fantasy points per game. He has not had more than 17 fantasy points in any game so far this year. And now he has to go on the road to face a Bills team in prime time that's had 2 weeks to prepare for the Packers and number 12. 5 of the 6 quarterbacks to face Buffalo this year have scored under 14 fantasy points. They've allowed just 5 touchdown passes this entire year in 6 games. That's the 3rd lowest touchdown rate. They're also tied for 2nd in pressures. It's going to be a conservative offense. On the road at Buffalo, they don't want Josh Allen. They're going to try to run the ball as much as possible. Aaron Rodgers outside my top 15 for the week.
It was a good start to the season for Trevor Lawrence that has kind of hit a skid here. 1 combined touchdown pass in his last 3 games. They're going to London. And, they're going to a defense that has just been kryptonite to fantasy quarterbacks all year.
Yeah, I mean, look, the offense is struggling, but let's ride Broncos country when it comes to that defense. They've been great. They've been absolutely great. They've allowed more than 12 fantasy points to a quarterback once this year. By the way, it was Geno Smith.
Yep.
Kind of love that. They've given up just 3 passing touchdowns total in 7 games this year. 3. No team in the NFL allows a lower yards per pass attempt than the Denver Broncos. They've given up just 5.5. And so Trevor Lawrence, who has just 1 combined touchdown in his last 3 games, he had the rushing touchdowns, but he's thrown for only 1 touchdown pass in his last 3 games here. He's completing under 55% in 3 of the last 4. This one feels... Listen, I get it. The Jaguars are London's team. This is the London game. It's the early Sunday morning game. But Trevor Lawrence outside my top 20 for the week.
I would argue that schedule and that travel and that kickoff time makes things even worse for the Jacksonville offense.
So before we go to break real quickly, let's talk about Kadarius Toney to the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'm curious if you agree with this take.
Okay.
You ready for my take?
Absolutely.
Who cares?
It means nothing.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares? And I mean it this way. I think it's a really nice move for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think the way that it will manifest itself in fantasy is that it's another weapon for Patrick Mahomes. It's another guy that you're going to be like, what the? Because they'll, all of a sudden he'll take a direct snap from center and like
Jerick McKinnon style.
Right. He'll take touchdowns away from the Kelceys and the Jujus and the guys you might actually start. Like he's going to be another Noah Gray, another Sky Moore, another that guy. Oh, sure. Mecole Hardman scores 3 touchdowns on 6 touches. Like we've seen him being insanely talented when he's on the field, which has been a struggle for him. And I think it's smart that the Chiefs make the trade now, so he comes in during the bye week. He's got a week to get up to speed, and they'll get a package of plays from him. So again, great move for the Chiefs NFL-wise if they can get him on the field, and I think this might help Mahomes. It's just another weapon that you suddenly have to account for, a guy that can do a lot of different things. But the idea that Kadarius Toney is going to come into Kansas City and have consistent fantasy value when literally no one else ever has other than Travis Kelce, and I guess CEH for a while at the beginning of the year had some consistent fantasy value. But Juju's had 2 good games, okay, and it thinks like he's starting to emerge. But I just, when you face the Chiefs, it's death by 1,000 cuts, Connor.
I'm totally with you. This is what Brett Veach does for the Chiefs. He buys low on failed first-round picks.
Yeah.
And they get them in. And Kadarius Toney is under team control the next 2 years if they want him. So this could even be thinking long-term down the road. But fantasy relevance this year, I'm with you that there's not a significance in this.
Barring an injury. I could be proven wrong, but it just feels weird
at the moment.
At the moment, it feels odd that he's going to come in and suddenly supplant, have a lot more fantasy value than guys like MVS or Juju that are playing a lot more snaps. And those guys, for most of the year, have not been fantasy consistent. When we come back, it is closing time. Last call for me and Connor right here on the Happy Hour. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.